Welcome to Critical Issues, Alternative Views. I'm Ron Kramer. I serve as the host of our program. With me today are two of our regulars and a returning regular, we hope.
The prodigal son.
On my right here is Regena Nelson. Regena is in the Department of Teaching, Learning, and Educational Studies at Western Michigan University. Over there, that guy is Don Cooney, pretty recognizable figure in the Kalamazoo community. Don's also a professor at Western in the School of Social Work, and most importantly right now, I think he serves as the city commissioner in the city of Kalamazoo. And our prodigal son who's returning is Felix Brooks. Felix was a regular on the program for what, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And then he and his wife decided they were going to retire down to Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yeah.
So you've been down in Wilmington for a few years now.
7 years.
Was it 7 years?
years.
Boy,
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, but that's how long it was.
that
Yeah.
long. So Felix is returning. So Felix, what do you see yourself doing back in Kalamazoo now that you guys are back?
I've already gotten semi-engaged. You know, as you well know, I'm teaching in sociology program. I'm teaching an online class, Introduction to Criminal Justice. So that's been fun.
Okay.
Different teaching online. I did a little bit of that at UNCW when I was down there, but mostly in person. So it's just a little bit of a paradigm shift, but I'm enjoying it. Doing that, and I'm doing some consulting for the juvenile justice. I'm doing writing some curriculum for probation officers in the state of Illinois right now. So those are my two little side hustles.
Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Cool.
Well, if people don't know, Felix served as a juvenile probation officer in Kalamazoo for a long time and had a couple of other gigs. You were with the diversity officer at KVCC for a while.
Yeah.
And worked at the foundation.
Yeah, Community Investment Officer at Kalamazoo Community Foundation.
Yeah, so he's been around a bit. So, but we're really happy to have you back on the program.
Absolutely.
So I heard there's an election coming.
When is it? Wednesday or?
Wednesday would be. Some people would rather have you think it's Wednesday, right? So we're in the final stretch, the home stretch of the election. We're just days away as we tape this program from the 2024 election. We've been talking about this election on the program quite a bit over the summer and into the fall. And one of the things that happened last week is that Vice President Kamala Harris came to Kalamazoo and had a rally at the Wings Event Center. And she brought with her a special guest. Who did she bring along?
Michelle Obama. And as you recall, during the Democratic National Convention, Michelle's speech was outstanding.
Oh, man.
Everybody was quoting her, get out and do something. And so to bring her to Kalamazoo, this is serious, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a person who is invested in Kamala's success, and she brought it. Kalamazoo showed up to see Michelle and Kamala and to hear Michelle's message. I mean, if you haven't gotten it so far, it is the importance of women's rights, right? And abortion rights and the ripple effect it will have. So she was very clear to say, it's not just about getting abortions that's at stake here. When women have any kind of health issue and they go to a doctor, doctors may be like, whoa, I don't know if I can treat you right now because this can be seen as interfering on a potential birth. And she wanted us to think about what that means. Not just women, but she also said to the men, like, this may not affect you directly, but indirectly. Think about your daughters, your sisters, your wives, your mothers, and what do you want for their health, and what should we do about this? And so there is a choice here. If we want to protect women's rights, and you stand for that, this is the person who's going to do that for us, Kamala Harris. So she was very clear about bringing it up, about the lifespan of women's issues and their reproductive issues.
Yes, it was a very strong speech. She really wowed him. There was one other part of her speech that I thought was really important to highlight, and this got lots of national attention. What she said in Kalamazoo, that was the first time she'd made an appearance on behalf of the Harris campaign in Kalamazoo, and it got a lot of national attention. But she, in addition to her great feminist manifesto on talking about women's health, she also talked quite angrily in some senses about the media and double standards that Harris faces. And I'll quote her directly. She says, "I hope you'll forgive me if I'm a little frustrated that some of us are choosing to ignore Donald Trump's gross incompetence while asking Kamala to dazzle us at every turn. I hope you'll forgive me if I'm a little angry that we are indifferent to his erratic behavior, his obvious mental decline, his history as a convicted felon, a known slumlord, a predator found liable for sexual abuse. All this while we pick apart Kamala's answers from interviews that he doesn't even have the courage to do, y'all.
Well, here's the interesting piece about that. Now, I don't know if you heard, I think it was Van Jones's commentary afterwards, and he put it the best I've heard it. You have two people taking different exams.
Ooh.
That's the way it said. They're not taking the same exam.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And yet we're holding her to this standard, you know, that's unrealistic. I mean, she's not taking the same exam that Trump's taking. He's taking a pass-fail exam.
Yeah, yeah.
She's taking a much more rigorous exam.
Yeah.
And he says the media seems like Michelle Obama said, the media seems to be missing that.
Right.
They seem to be holding her to this standard way up here, but not holding him to the same standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at history and his history versus her history, I mean, imagine if she had all those convictions, if she had those accusations of sexual abuse and convictions on sexual abuse, she wouldn't even be considered. But this guy, he gets a pass. He just, that's okay.
Just take all that off the table and just look at the business failures.
Yeah.
If she had come in as a candidate having filed bankruptcy on 5 occasions, that would have automatically disqualified her for any position of leadership. But we seem to give him a free pass on that. What's one of the commentators calls it? The owner of the Dallas Mavericks,
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban calls it Trumpnesia, where people just forget all the bad stuff that he's done. It just goes away.
Yeah.
They don't think about it.
Yeah.
Well, how about the fact that he tried to overthrow a free and fair democratic election on January 6th in 2021? Boom. I mean, that should have disqualified him forever from running again. I mean, to be honest, if Merrick Garland had been on the mark and initiated the proceedings sooner, he should be in prison right now for trying to for obstructing the certification process and trying to overthrow a free and fair election.
Yeah.
I mean, boom, right off the bat. I mean, that's a crime that should have disqualified him from ever being considered as a candidate again. But somehow again, Trumpnesia. Or that gets overlooked.
It's a love festival. That's what it refers to.
Yeah, it was a love fest. Yeah. It's baffling to me.
I wonder, because I draw a lot of parallels between that 3.5-hour time gap between the time the rioting started and the time Trump did something, and parallels between Merrick Garland waiting for a whole year. What were you waiting for?
Yeah.
Everybody could see what happened on TV. It's there for everybody to see. You got all these hours of footage. So why did it take all this time for you to assign a special prosecutor?
Right.
I really wondered about that. You know?
Right. And I haven't heard any response on that either. No.
And then the delay game that Trump's legal team has been able to successfully execute means that there's no accountability for that crime before the election. And there will be no accountability at all if Trump wins the election, because he will immediately install an attorney general who will fire the special prosecutor right off the bat, probably the first order of business.
Yeah.
Right.
This time around. Just back to the abortion issue and reproductive health care. One of the things that I'm sensing right now, looking at the early vote, is that women are really turning out. Do you think that's going to be the deciding factor, Regena?
I hope so. I do. And as people have been sharing things with me on social media, we know that there are some women who will listen to their husbands if they're voting one way, even though they do not support Trump and his policies. And how that's going to play out, we don't know. But overall, that women are saying that this is the right choice. So we hope that plays out that way.
And it seems to be a surge of women voters for,
yeah.
for Kamala.
Exactly. When
And
you
that-
look at by gender, you know, who supports her, who supports
Yeah,
Trump,
huge
it's
gender gap
overwhelming.
there.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
gender gap.
very
Yeah.
And his statements about he's going to be a president that's going to look out for women, that stuff didn't help him at all. He was much better served just to not say anything about it at all.
Yeah.
I'm
Whether
going to
they-
protect you whether you want me to or not.
Right, right.
I mean,
Little children.
yeah, I was like oh, that was just such a, again, another baffling statement on his part, right? One of the things that's also happened since the last time we had a chance to talk about the election was the increasing number of Republican figures who
Yeah.
have come out in support of Kamala Harris.
Impressive.
I mean, Liz Cheney is certainly among the most important, and Liz Cheney has been traveling around with Kamala, holding town hall-like sessions with the two of them together, which I think is somewhat astounding. If you'd
Yeah,
have thought about
yeah.
that from a few years ago, that you wouldn't have thought that that would happen. But Liz Cheney's been really out there, very forthright. She's fearless. She's really fearless in attacking Trump. I mean, she really calls it as it is.
Yeah.
I've known, I don't think there's anyone on the Democratic side who has said the harsh things about Trump that Liz Cheney has been saying. But she's not the only one. Who else has been speaking out? And
Well, the generals.
the generals.
Kelly, what's his name?
Miley.
Miley. And they've been really, really strong on what they've been saying. And they were in the room and they saw it. And they just have been really warning the nation that if this guy gets back, this is what you can expect. And it's really dangerous. Yeah, powerful.
John Kelly was not only a Marine general, he also served as the Director of Homeland Security
Right.
for the Trump administration in the early years, but then he became Chief of Staff. Okay,
Intimately.
there's nobody who's closer to the president during the presidency in the Oval Office than the Chief of Staff.
Right.
So John Kelly had the best view and the longest view of how Trump acts in his capacity as president. And he has just had scathing things to say. I mean, number one, he comes right out and calls Trump a fascist.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Real clear.
I mean, oh, okay. I could expect some radical leftists to call Trump a fascist, but General Kelly, Chief of Staff to the President of the United States, to call the president that he served a fascist? I mean, that's just powerful.
Really?
I mean, I don't know. Are people not paying attention to that? I mean, how could any Trump supporter hear General Kelly talk about that and not at least be given some pause in terms of their support?
Yeah.
But he had much more to say. He's done a series of interviews with Michael Schmidt, who's a two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter for the New York Times. And Schmidt's book that he did on Trump, the last years of Trump, Kelly has just, he really had lengthy interviews with Kelly. And some of the things in that book mirror what he said in public more recently. But he had heard that Trump was maybe not quite competent and not quite mentally stable to be president. He said, but then when I got in there, when I was now the Chief of Staff and I got to observe him close hand, I was really appalled that this guy is so incurious, that this guy is so resistant to facts, that this guy is such a malignant narcissist, that this guy is just dangerous,
Right.
and should never, ever, ever be near the nuclear codes. That was sort of the big point that he was trying to make, that this guy is really off his rocker, and then later now he's come right out and calling him directly a fascist. So, and the other generals, I mean, it's not just Kelly, but other generals who served in the military under Trump have also come out and basically blasted him also, and said he's a dangerous person. He should never be anywhere near running American foreign policy, that this will be dangerous for our country to have this man back in power. And yet, again, it seems to me that somehow everything slides off of Trump.
Yeah.
Well, see, because
these critiques.
the polarization that we're dealing with now as a country, people have chosen a side. And once you choose a side, as I tell my students all the time, once you firmly have chosen a side, It doesn't matter any of the bad behavior people on your side do. You're always going to stand up for them because you don't like those people over there.
Right.
This is our guy.
Yeah.
And our guy doesn't like those guys over there that we don't like. Right?
So we don't. So whatever he does, we'll figure out a way to rationalize
Yeah.
it.
Don't confuse me with the facts.
Yeah.
I don't want to know that because, you know, he said it himself when he ran the first time. I could shoot somebody and it wouldn't make any difference.
Right.
It doesn't matter what they say or what he does. Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, look at the people that he admires, the Erdogans of Turkey,
Oh.
Viktor Orban. Those are the people that he likes. Those guys are dictators.
Right.
They get to do what they want to do. They get to put their hands on levels of power and make people move. He wants to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And he felt like he was held back the first time
And he
around.
was held back last time by General
Kelly.
Kelly and
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. The next time, if he gets back in, there won't be any adults
No.
in the room with him.
Right.
No,
He's
he
going
won't
to
let them
have
in.
all his sycophants and cronies in there who will let him do whatever he wants to do, or in themselves take charge because he's somewhat incompetent to act himself. But the Stephen Millers of the world and the Steve
Bannon.
Bannons of the world will now know we can do whatever the hell we want because Trump, we can manipulate him any way we want to. And we can carry out our extreme right nationalist agenda, and Trump will we can get Trump to go along with it. So that's what I fear the most, that not Trump himself in the sense of he's got great ideas about what he wants to do, but the people around him who will manipulate him, who are very dangerous people.
Absolutely.
Talk about fascists.
Oh.
I mean, talk about fascists. Miller and Bannon and a bunch of other people who are, and then again, this whole group that produced this project 2025, right?
The Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, the Heritage Foundation, right. Yeah, when you read that, it's just really scary.
It's a manifesto, but it's also a blueprint for how we want to do things the second time around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who our enemies are, how do we get rid of folks at the civil service level so that we can control the administrative state, because that's where they think they failed the first time. They weren't able to control the administrators at all these agencies, and they want to make sure that changes this time around by just getting rid of those people.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Take a blowtorch. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, said the other day, take a blowtorch to the administrative state.
Right.
Burn it all down. Burn it all down, and then there'll be nothing there to prevent us from imposing our extreme agenda on the American people. Nobody to control us within, and nobody to control us without.
Well, one of the things I think is, hold on for a second there, I'm going to show you that. Timothy Snyder talks about in his book On Tyranny, is how dictatorship and autocracy creep up really slow. And folks who should notice don't notice until it's upon them. You know, you look at Weimar Germany, you look at what happened in France, and all of a sudden you realize that these people are really in control. They're really doing what they say they were going to do. And by the time you realize that it's too late, same thing in Rwanda, but it always starts with rhetoric that people would dismiss. Well, they're not really serious about. They're not really going to do that. And then it happens, and then when it happens, everybody gets amnesia. We didn't think that was going to be the case. We don't remember him saying that. We don't think he actually meant that. But then you look up, and then you're here. You know?
So history, we should learn from
Right.
Germany especially. Yeah.
And the fact that we've always had this extremist right-wing DNA. I mean, if you go back and listen to either one of the two seasons of Rachel Maddow's Ultra, she talks about that. That what we're seeing now is not anything new. The playbook that they're deploying now was deployed in the 40s and in the 50s as well during the McCarthy era. Same sorts of rhetoric, same sorts of demonization, same sorts of enemies of the people. Who's destroying our country? Who do we need to get rid of? Same demonization of immigrants. That's all been played out before, and it's like we totally forgot that happened here.
Yeah.
And then we find ourselves back at the spot, and people act like, well, there's no way this could happen here. Yeah, it could happen here, and it has happened here.
And there have been attempts to make it happen here a lot, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah. The historian Jeff Hahn has a book, Illiberal America, which is a history of all those attempts and tendencies within the American history in that direction. And we've been able to stave them off or work around them and block them. But this time, again, they've come dangerously close Well, of course, Trump already had one term and was restrained, but won't be restrained in the second
No.
term.
You know, and Isabella Wilkerson talked about it in her book Caste. She talked about it. It was fascinating how the Germans developed their playbook for the final solution of how they were going to deal with the Jews by studying Jim Crow in the United
Right.
States, because we'd already perfected it.
Yeah.
We'd already set up a state within a state. And they wanted to come over and say, well, let's see how they are able to pull this off in front of everybody's eyes and still make it work. And they learned from that. And they took it back to Germany with them. And that's when Hitler started, all the pogrom stuff like that. That was all based on what they saw, what they learned here.
Wow.
In fact, there's a whole episode on revisionist history this season where they did it on Hitler's Olympics, where they talk about the folks that the Germans sent over here to study Jim Crow in the South, and what they learned and what they took back to Germany that they would use as a playbook over there. So we've sort of perfected this art for a long time ago. We just forget that it happened.
Yeah, we don't want to. And of course, the right doesn't want us to learn that history, right?
Right. Right. For sure.
We don't want people to be made uncomfortable.
Yeah. Right.
No. No.
You have to ban critical race theory and other efforts at history that are accurate depictions of what's going on in our society over time. It seems to me that the Trump-Vance team, during this last stretch of the campaign, the lies have been thick from the very beginning, right? I mean, every time Trump opens his mouth, it's probably a lie coming out, right? I mean, we should have learned from his presidency. I mean, it was documented that he told, hundreds and hundreds of lies during the time he was president before. And on the campaign trail, again, we've just had one lie after another. And every campaign ad that they put out there is essentially been a lie about Kamala and about anything else. I mean, and again, I understand political advertising, there's always going to be puffery, there's always going to be shading the truth, there's always going to be, misleading things that are done in political ads. We've come to expect that. I hate it about political ads, but we've come to expect that. But these are at just another level. The outright nature of the lies that are being told is just astounding. And I mean, some of the things are just so ridiculous. This whole thing about the Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio.
Wow.
I mean, if you'd have told me, okay, Donald Trump is going to come out and say that there are migrants in Ohio who are eating dogs and cats, and that's going to be one of the ways he's going to whip up his hysteria against migrants and move ahead that as a campaign issue. I said, even Donald Trump wouldn't do that. That's just so stupid. Who would ever believe that, right?
No.
There it is.
No.
And they wouldn't give it up.
It's defended by their side.
They wouldn't give it up.
Even when there was proof positive at ground zero to the person who actually started the rumor said that, whoops, I was wrong.
I was wrong.
Even though that came out, they never let that story go.
The Republican mayor of
Springfield came out.
The Republican governor of Ohio. All basically because it endangered a lot of people's lives in Springfield, Ohio. It made their lives miserable, and probably still is having an impact there. So this is dangerous stuff. And again, the Republican officials in Ohio are trying to say, no, this is not true. Don't believe this. Don't allow this to affect our community in this way. But they wouldn't stop. And J.D. Vance, who's a senator from Ohio, he was right in there telling the lie just as much as Donald Trump was.
What was his quote? If I have to make up stuff to get the attention of the media, I'm going to continue to do that. That's your answer?
Admitting that I'm lying. And I'm ready to lie.
We're making things up, but we need to make this stuff up so we can generate the fear. Fear-mongering. This is the Trump playbook, right? I mean, their whole campaign is one attempt at fear-mongering after another, right? With regard to migrants, with regard to inflation, with regard to crime. I mean, it's just one attempt at fear-mongering after another.
Even when they fly in the face of facts, doesn't matter.
No, it matters.
Because they've learned from the whole election being stolen trope that this works with our base.
Right.
So we're going to just throw this out there because they believe it.
They'll believe anything if we say it. And we say it enough. Right, the big lie. I mean, Hitler, again, the big lie. It's a big lie, but if you repeat it enough and you say it with conviction, then people will tend to believe it.
Well, last semester I had my students read 1984. And because I taught a class on disinformation. And one of my students came and said in the class, and he said, Mr. Brooks, now I understand. I understand how this whole being able to manipulate the truth actually works. And there's this famous quote from the book that says, you don't believe what you see with your eyes or hear with your ears. The truth is what we tell you the truth is. Because that was the party line.
Yeah.
And my students said, now I understand why they keep putting this up, because this is what they want us to believe.
Yeah.
And you keep saying it, after a while, people they just give up. You wear people down.
There's a reason why the term Orwellian is still in our political language, isn't there? One of the other big lies, Regina, was the post-birth abortions.
Yes.
I mean, there is no such thing.
Right, exactly. That, I guess he stated that even after a baby's born, they're deciding what to do with it, and they're killing them.
They're killing
right?
it,
And then they had to fact check that in the debate to say there is no place where it's legal to kill babies. Like, this is just ridiculous. And it can be, it's a distortion, because we do have states that have varying cutoffs to when you can have an abortion. So some are very restrictive, like no abortions, and you have some that are 5 to 12 weeks, and some up to 22 weeks. And in Michigan, we have it into the viability of the birth. So it is kind of, someone could take that and run with it, but that is absolutely not true, that once a child is born, that we allow that to happen.
I think that's called infanticide.
Yeah, exactly.
It's illegal, everywhere.
Plus, the other thing on the abortionist, you can address this to Regina as well, is that I think what people don't realize that even in the states that have had referendums to enshrine abortion into their constitution, that if the Republicans win this election in the House and the Senate, they can impose a national abortion ban. That can still happen.
Exactly.
And people don't. A lot of people don't realize that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Because now they've convinced people it's all or nothing. So if you don't do it, this is what's going to happen. Right. We're going to be killing babies. Right.
One of the other more ridiculous lies that Trump tells over and over again is the fact that there can be trans operations in schools. That you send your son to school and he comes home in the afternoon and he's had a trans operation that the school system imposed on him and never consulted. I mean, my God, you can't even get an aspirin in a school system.
Without somebody's permission and 3 signed sheets of paper.
I mean, what school system is set up to provide trans operations at school or would have even an interest in doing that? So, I mean, these things are just so ridiculous.
But for the base, though. Because these are folks that they've demonized. So if they've demonized, then anything we say about them is going to be true. We can just throw it out there. They'll swallow this hook, line, and sinker.
Again, fear-mongering, creating demons, creating scapegoats of one kind or another. Migrants, trans people. I mean, this is their playbook. I thought it was really heinous for them to attack the hurricane response in North Carolina. I mean, that really impacted people on the ground.
It did.
They became fearful of the very people who were coming to help rescue them.
That's right.
Because of the lies that were being taught. That money had been taken out of FEMA to provide immigrants with benefits, or that FEMA was going to steal their houses or to take their property, or it was just ridiculous.
There must be a group of people in their campaign that sits there and says, okay, what can we make up today to throw out there?
What ridiculous story can we tell that they'll believe this time?
What can they run with? Because like in the Ohio case, even the mayors and cities in North Carolina, because I live down there, came out and said, no, FEMA's been on the scene from the get-go. They've been providing help to our people from the get-go. So all the stuff that you've been hearing about, he said none of that stuff's true.
Don't believe that. So again, just like in Ohio, responsible Republican officials on the ground in those states were coming out and saying, no, that's not true. Don't believe that. And again, so I don't understand why there aren't more Republicans, who will not come forward and say, this is a line that they've crossed and we can't support them. I mean, it's just, I just think the Lindsey Grahams of the world and the other Mitch McConnell, I mean, God, what a hypocrite. Condemned Trump for January 6th on the Senate floor and then turns right around and supports him and kisses his butt. It's just, I don't know, it's just incredible.
See, I think the big thing, and I talk to my students about polarization all the time, is that you've thrown your lot in with a side, okay?
Yeah.
And once you've done that, the worst thing in the world is to wake up to the realization that I've been made a fool of.
Yeah.
People don't like to admit that, because that's what you'd have to admit. Wait a minute, I was wrong about all this stuff.
Right.
And people do not like to, so they'll stay, keep their heads down and stay on their team, as opposed to admitting that they were wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Although, again, with Lindsey Graham and some of the other officials, they called it as they saw it from the very beginning. I mean, Lindsey Graham was saying, this guy's dangerous, he'll hurt our party, he's a buffoon. I mean, and then
They
when
go right back.
when
Right.
Trump
Like a
gets in
boomerang.
power, he then,
Yeah.
I'm going to turn right
Because-
around and be a hypocrite. But the main lies, again, I think, have to do with migrants. Again, the fear-mongering, the demonization of migrants, and the idea that they're going to have mass deportations of migrants, linking that with crime. We know
And
from a
illegal
criminological perspective that that's not
Yeah.
true. Migrants do not commit crime. In fact, they commit less crime than native-born Americans across the board. And again, with the economy and inflation, the economy is booming right now. You'd never know that from listening to a Trump ad, but the economy is booming. Yes, inflation was a problem at the beginning of the Biden administration, but it was a worldwide inflation.
Yeah.
And it was caused by the COVID pandemic.
Right.
You know, that wasn't Biden's fault that there was
No.
a high inflation, but they've brought the inflation down. The economy's booming. I mean, I would think there's no way you could run against the economy the way it is right now, except people still think the inflation is out of control and that it's Biden's fault and Harris's fault.
But they will say, when you ask them, that they like capitalism. Because this was a little debate I got with them with my students in class. So if you like capitalism, what you're saying is you don't want the government putting its thumbprint down on the economy. So if that's the case, then how could inflation be President Biden's fault?
Right.
What's he supposed to do?
Yeah.
If this is a market-driven economy, what's he supposed to do? Because you say you like capitalism and you like these
don't want-
markets,
yeah.
you don't want the
Right.
government getting their hands in there. So what's he supposed to do then?
Laissez-faire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hands off. Well, boy, there's still a lot to get to here. Our time is running short. So again, it's all going to come down to Pennsylvania. I mean, I really think that's it, right? If Pennsylvania, whichever goes to Pennsylvania, which way Pennsylvania goes, the election goes, I think. Unless there's some big surprises out there. But right now, Michigan, Wisconsin are leaning toward Harris. It looks like Pennsylvania is still very, very, very close.
But I think that rally at Madison Square Garden, where he talked about Puerto Rico and being the garbage, there are 500,000 Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania, and they are really up for this election. They were really insulted by that, and they're ready to take a stand. My brother lives in Philadelphia. I was just talking to him the other night.
Yeah, I think that was a disastrous mistake on the part of Trump to allow those right-wing racist comedians to make those kind of jokes and make the kind of statements they did at that rally. So that might tip the balance there. I still think North Carolina's in play.
What do you think? You've been
I'd
down
like
there.
to think so, because we've been saying that for 2 election cycles, and then it never really pans out. But it's going to be close, I would think.
Yeah,
I think Mark Robinson's candidacy has probably fueled Democrats, coming out to the polls, because he's been such a terrible Republican candidate for those folks. So that may help as well.
Yeah. And there's still Arizona and Nevada.
And Georgia.
Right? And Georgia. That all could be into play. So, I mean, if Harris can break through in 1 or 2 of those places, if she can win Arizona and Nevada or Georgia and North Carolina, then, she might be able to withstand the loss of Pennsylvania. But I still think, to win the election, you got to win Pennsylvania.
I think so.
Efforts at voter suppression and intimidation have been going on, right? Been trying to cut people off the rolls, and they tried in Georgia to require the hand counting of ballots, right? And there were efforts to say we're not going to certify the election if we suspect, and we will suspect, any kind of electoral interference. Those things have been knocked down by the courts, and I think from what I have gathered, the Democrats are in really have really been prepared.
Yeah.
They've anticipated what tricks are going to be played and what kind of issues are going to be raised, and they're ready to immediately respond. So even though those issues are going to come up, I think the Democrats seem well positioned legally to deal with them.
But the Supreme Court this week allowed Virginia, wasn't it? Virginia?
They did allow some of the people to be taken off the roll in Virginia.
And fortunately, Virginia's a Democratic leading state, so so it's not gonna. It wouldn't have as much blowback effect as it would say if it were in Georgia or Arizona or for Pennsylvania, for that matter.
Yeah. Well, anybody want to make any predictions? I want to move on and talk about some larger issues that I think we need to address in the future after this election is over. But anybody got a prediction for what's going to happen next Tuesday?
I'll keep my cards close to the vest.
Okay.
All predictions do is get you into trouble.
So I'm always going to put it out there because I'm an optimist, and I want people to do the right thing. So I think in the end we do. I believe Kamala's she's gonna win. Yeah, and in fact, Inauguration Day is my daughter's birthday. And so I'm always like, I'm going to make sure we work to give you the best birthday present ever. And that will be a black female president. I got to deliver on that. I'm going to do everything I can. Exactly.
That would be a great birthday present.
Yeah, the last prediction I did was in 2016, and
that didn't work well. No.
I said I'll stay out of the prediction business after that. So.
Okay. Don, how are you feeling?
I'm afraid, but I think Harris will win. I do. I think there's people out there that, there's enough decent people out there who see through the lies, see through the dangers, and in the end will be supporting her. So I think she'll win.
I can't believe that it's as close as it is.
Right.
Because I really thought that, suburban women and that Trump would not do well with people in the suburbs, that he had lost them after the last time, and that if he ran again, he would have his base. He's always going to have that base because they're never going to change, but that he wouldn't be able to add to it. And he has in some ways that I don't quite understand. So I just don't understand. Michelle Obama said, I don't understand why this is this close.
Right.
So it's closer than I would have even thought it would be. But I think that in the end, and Trump has basically made some colossal blunders down the stretch here, I think, in terms of some of his statements. Still trying to appeal to the base, still trying to cozy up to the far right, the extreme nationalists and the racists. And I think that does turn off enough people that people who suburban people who might have been in the Republican camp in the past, I think are not going to go there this time. And I think enough Republican defections will cause other Republicans to have some pause. I think that Democratic turnout will be greater. I think they've got the better ground game.
Wow. They do have
all
a great
the way
ground.
around.
Yeah.
And I think the surge of women voters will carry the day. And I do think Harris will win the election in a very narrow victory, but I do think that she can prevail. Yes. But again, I'm very fearful. I'm stressed. Right. Very stressed about this election.
I do think that that the Democrats have to learn a lesson here. I think his main strength is that there are so many people in this country that the system doesn't work for. And he is not part of the system. And they're going to vote for him no matter what, because this doesn't work for me. And I think the Democrats better learn a lesson from that and start trying to change things and reaching out to those people for whom the system doesn't work, who are legion.
Yes, yeah. The Democrats should listen a little bit more to Bernie.
Absolutely. He's right on target, as usual.
So, all right. So I've got everybody but Felix on record here.
You got me on record.
But I wanted to end today by looking to the future, because this election and, of course, recent elections, I think, have raised some really critical issues. That's what we're supposed to talk about, right? Critical issues. And one of them, I think, is the Electoral College. We have got to abolish the Electoral College. This is just ridiculous. the fact that Donald Trump might win next week without getting the most votes is just infuriating. Again, he did the first time he won, and George W. Bush won without winning the popular vote in 2000. How can it be that the person that doesn't get the most votes still wins the election?
Well, you know why that is.
Of course.
If you know anything else about the history of the Electoral College, you know why that is. That's small states and Southern slaveholders built that piece into the Constitution when those little amendments passed. They built that in there.
They did.
They weren't going to compromise without that.
Right. There would
And
have
as a
been no
result,
Constitution.
For the most part, it didn't really matter until it did matter.
Right.
You know.
And now it has mattered
And
a
now
lot.
it matters a lot.
In the late 20th and early 21st century, it matters a lot. But this has to be made a front and center issue. We have to have a national popular vote plan. There's plenty of them out there. There's lots of people that have been writing about this and talking about this, and there's all kinds of plans. I got a book in the mail this week that's like this thick that outlines a national popular vote plan. But that has to be a front and center issue. We have to get rid of this.
You realize how close we got to abolishing the Electoral College in the 1970s by Birch By's effort. He was there. He was that close.
He was almost there. So to me, that's one of the issues. Another issue that I'm concerned about is the money in politics. The dark
absolutely.
money.
Worse.
Citizens United, probably one of the worst Supreme Court decisions ever. And it seems to me that, and again, it's so hard for us to address these issues given the politics right now. But again, it would seem to me that this is another one of those issues that, only 15, okay. We have a bit more time than I thought. Abolishing dark money would seem to me to be one of the things that we really need to work on as well.
Absolutely. The amount of money that's been spent on television ads is just amazing.
Well, and the length of the campaign.
Yeah.
I spent a week in the UK, and I was talking to some of my colleagues over there, and they're fascinated because their election campaigns don't last that long.
Right.
And then there's a blackout on advertising. You're talking about a 6-week campaign. That's it. And then you're done.
Makes sense.
You know?
Makes
and
sense.
they seem to be able to elect, how should we say, capable leaders for the most part, without having a perpetual candidacy like we have here.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, the length of it, the money spent on television ads. And it's so hard to stand these TV ads. If you watch any television, you're just bombarded.
Thank God for streaming services.
You're just bombarded with these ads, and they're so ridiculous for the most part. And almost all of them are just filled with lies and hate. And, I try to hit the mute button as quickly as I can when the ads come on. To me, that would be another thing that I would try to target. I'm not sure how to do that. I guess the First Amendment,
is your big stumbling block there.
Is a stumbling block there. But can't there be some reform of that whole system?
We've done it. There have been different models for that, certainly in other countries. But the thing that strikes me about that is who can run for office? The only way that you can run for office is playing up to these really rich people to give you the money to run your campaign. Right. If you wanted to run for the Senate next year in Michigan, you would have to raise $20,000 a week, every week for the next 6 years to be competitive. Now, how are you going to get that money? The only way you get that money is going to those people that got enormous amounts of money. So we end up with really qualified people totally out of the whole picture. And I think that hurts our country, Charlie.
The other option, Don, is you could text me 40 times a day to send you money.
Right. And then just to get rid of me. Okay.
Right.
No, the rest of you, I'm sure, are experiencing that, right?
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
getting
Oh,
a
yeah.
million
Oh,
text
yeah.
messages.
Every day.
Yeah,
Every day.
And
Exactly.
I'm begging, I'm on hands and knees begging for money, or the alarmist, oh, well, the polls show we're way behind, give me more money, and if you don't give me $40 today, I'll lose, and
They sound like evangelical preachers predicting the end of days,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But again, that's all then tied to the campaign finance reform,
Yeah,
right?
right,
Because
exactly.
it is so enormously expensive.
And the length of campaigns.
The
And the
length
life
of the
of campaigns.
campaigns. Here you got to keep spending this money for months and months and months. And right, I mean, it would be very difficult for a civic-minded person to get into that fray, and the money obstacles are so great. Or then you end up going and getting the dark money and being beholden to those.
Because like Don said, once you take money from the big donors, they own a piece of you.
Yeah,
Whether you believe that or not, there's some expectation there for all this money that we're given.
You're going to pick up the phone if they call.
Yeah.
But if we call, we're going to get somebody on the staff who's going to write a little memo that 6 people called about this. Yeah, but no, they're going to talk to you, and you better respond.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, what are some of the other issues that you all see as things after the horrid experience of this campaign? What are some other things that you think in the future we need to try to address or work on, adjust?
One issue is Social Security. The Social Security, I just taught the class on this week, so I'm up on it. And, that there's a panel that looks over the next 75 years and makes recommendations. It says, how long is it going to be solvent? How long is it going to be able to meet 100% of its responsibilities? And what they said was that the Social Security system as it exists now can meet its full responsibilities until 2035. And at that time, if nothing is done, they would have to cut benefits across the board. They'd only be able to pay about 80% of the benefits. And so there has to be an adjustment here. The Social Security payments out aren't enough for so many people. But neither party wants to talk about that because that's going to involve sacrifices, and neither of them want to talk about it. But the longer they don't talk about it, the worse it's going to be for Social Security. That has to be addressed.
Yeah, I would agree because, I've talked about this in my class for decades about one of the things that they definitely need to do is get rid of the cap.
Yes, 142,000 it is now.
That would go a long way.
That would,
go a long way.
67% if they got rid of the cap.
Yeah, that would be an important first step.
Yes.
To do that.
Because I always wonder why is it that people like myself and probably you guys do have to pay Social Security tax on every dime that I make.
Right.
But somebody who's making 3 or 4 times, they get to stop
Yeah.
at a certain level.
Yeah.
It made no sense to me.
And they don't have to pay on returns on investments either. So it's just wage taxes that are paying for that. Yeah, no, that whole system needs to be looked at.
Okay. What are some other things that people think we need to focus on? Or
Oh yeah, I mean, we're sitting here, we talk about it often on this show, is what we're facing with climate change. Even though it didn't raise to the top as one of the main issues that people are focusing on in this election, it's not going away. And we do need to come up with a way to address this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the most urgent,
Yeah.
the most urgent problem facing humanity. And have we heard anything about it during this campaign?
Very little.
No,
I
because-
think Kamala has, occasionally, it's in the mix of a laundry list of issues and concerns that she's going to address in the future, but she doesn't want to get front and center on that issue.
No.
She has moved to the center. There's just no doubt about that. She's solidly in the center right now, maybe even the center right, with some of the things that she's done. But of course, that's the plan to win the election and to defeat Donald Trump. And so I say more power to you, because I definitely want you to defeat Trump. But at the same time, I'm also really concerned because
Absolutely.
this issue has gotten buried. And we're not talking about it, and we should be talking about it. It's the most important issue to be addressed. You know, I talk in my book, I talk about the crime of political omission, the climate crime of political omission, and political omission is what's happening even in terms of this electoral campaign.
And the thing about it is even when people are hit in the face with it, take North Carolina. The last hurricane that came through. Some of my friends would ever calling me, I'm like, well, you live in Wilmington. I'm like, no, this time north and west into the mountains.
Right.
I said, that's unprecedented.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. What you saw happen there doesn't happen there. If you lived on the coast, you'd expect that. I said, that's because the climate's changed. These storms are much more powerful now, and they can come further inland than they've ever come in before. And this is a textbook example of that.
And they carry more moisture.
Yeah, the intensity of the storms that we've experienced, it's just thrown it in our face. But people don't
I mean, it was
face
interesting that, you know, Asheville is often touted as a climate haven. Okay, yeah, come to the mountains of North Carolina. It's beautiful, and you don't have to worry about hurricanes, and you don't have to worry about...
Well, because you're hundreds of miles away from the coast, so that's the last thing you'd be worried about
Right,
up there.
right.
Yeah,
You would think you would be worried about it, but we should know better than that. But
yeah.
But there's so much disinformation being put out about climate change that people don't listen. They don't heed those warnings. They think, well, it can't happen here until it does.
Right. And if it's a problem we can take care of down the line. And we don't need to worry about that now. But we do.
We do. And yeah, it's not discussed. And again, there are some efforts. I mean, so denialism has been strong from the very beginning, but the denialism has shifted, right? It's more now in terms of like deflecting attention away from the fossil fuel industries or raising issues like cost, like, oh, you know, if we really address this, it's going to cost too much, right? You're going to have to pay too much in taxes. Government will get too big. Well, guess what? What happens when North Carolina and Asheville get slammed, right? Does that cost a little bit of money? Does government have to get involved? I mean, I probably quoted this thing from Christian Parente for a long time on this show, but climate change will make you love big government, right? If you're in Asheville right now, or anywhere in the mountains of North Carolina,
you want all the government you can get.
Exactly.
You want FEMA there to help out. I mean, otherwise, you know, this is such a devastating storm that you're not going to be able to rebound from it without any outside assistance. So, yeah, that's just crazy.
One of my political science colleagues down in North Carolina always says, you know, he says, we love our capitalism until we lose something, then we want all the socialism we can get.
You bet.
That's the case right now. Well, we got about 5 minutes left. One of the other things that I think we need to address is the corrupted information ecosystem. The media coverage has been just awful, and the advertising is awful. The disinformation is just so strong. And I don't know how we address this, but I don't know how you can have a democracy with such a corrupted information ecosystem. I don't know if you can keep a democracy in that. I mean, this is where Orwell comes back in.
Especially when one side's whole playbook is to get you to doubt everything.
Right.
Because if you can create that aura where you can doubt everything, then you can flood the system with as much disinformation as you've seen during this campaign as possible. It doesn't matter whether or not it's true. We're just going to put this stuff out there. We're just going to keep throwing it out there. Because if people say, well, then now what am I supposed to believe? Who am I supposed to trust?
Exactly.
And so many of those people control so much of the media and the information systems that we have.
I mean, if you're on Twitter or X or whatever those things, you see the stuff that comes through. It's like, people actually believe this stuff? Yeah, they do.
But they do. Yeah.
The whole system is designed for you to engage in negative ways. I mean, that's what the algorithms say. This is what you should put on these sites, because this is what people will engage with.
Yeah.
Clicks.
And if disinformation fuels that, so what?
Right.
Yeah.
More money for us.
One of the things we really have to deal with is economic inequality. If you measure poverty by what would happen to a family if they got an unexpected $300 bill a month, and would they be able to meet their 40% of the American families could not. That's got to change.
Right.
We have to change that. And the gap between ordinary people and the extreme wealthy, we have to address the economic situation. And that means really going after unlimited capitalism. We have to do something about that.
But Don, here's the other thing about that. That's absolutely true. We need to do that. But politically, how we do that in this political environment, when the culture war issues tend to
That's
intrude
hard.
and tend to dominate, right? So that the economic issues get lost, even for people who need those economic changes, get caught up in trans people and other culture issues that they don't respond in a way that really reflects their own economic interest. And I think that's become an increasing problem in our politics right now.
Yep.
And I think that's what the Poor People's Campaign is about. I mean, I think they are trying to say, okay, this is not just a black issue, because in the past, poverty's looked at as a black issue. If you take the total number of black and white people who are in that 40%, and those people come together, then we got a chance at it. And I think that has to happen.
Right.
But then you have, abortion and the transphobia.
I know,
and,
it's tough.
The racism that's there in the system.
Those tend to crowd out those other issues.
And they crowd
that's
out.
where people will engage at, in those places right there.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. That's where they will engage.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, we have 2 minutes left. How many people have voted already?
I voted early.
I didn't vote. No, well, I love the election day.
You're going to go
I
out
like
and vote?
about the election day.
You're a traditionalist.
Yeah, I am, man. I am. I can't,
At
no.
the Fetcher Center bright and early Saturday morning, casting my ballot. My wife and I both.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I think that because the election is so close, we're not going to even really know Tuesday night.
No,
like
definitely
not.
4 years
We won't
ago,
know
it's going to be
Tuesday
a day
night.
or two
No.
later till we really figure out what's going on. So.
Yep.
Unless it turns out to be a landslide for one side or the other, then we
Right.
will know. But
Well,
I don't see that happening.
No.
Is there a blue tsunami out there, hopefully, that is going to come crashing into the election? I don't know. And again, the last couple of elections, I think the predictions about what were going to happen left the Republicans wanting. I mean, they were hoping for the red wave,
Yeah.
and
Right.
that didn't
No, it
materialize.
didn't happen.
And they were, expecting that in 2020, and didn't happen. So if that trend continues, then I think that bodes well for the Democrats as well. Well, we're out of time for today. So again, thanks to my
Thank you.
panel here.
Great.
And so whatever happens, the election, the next time we get together to talk, we're going to have a new set of issues to have to address. We're going to have to either cry and talk about how we're going to deal with a new Trump administration, or we're going to have to say, okay, now Kamala's in. What are we going to help her do, right? What are we going to make her do? Like
Yeah,
FDR
right. That's
demanded,
it. Yeah.
Make me do this with regard to labor issues. So we'll have to make Kamala do certain things. So thanks to our panel. Thank you for joining us. We hope you come back again on Critical Issues, Alternative Views.